You know what's interesting? The older you get, the more people start telling you how you should be softer, quieter, more grateful, less demanding. They'll try to measure your worth by your looks, your status, your age, your usefulness. But here's the truth. Your value doesn't live in their opinion. It lives in your peace. It lives in your boundaries. It lives in the way you stop explaining yourself to people who never listened in the first place. Because the moment you stop letting others define your worth, you start owning it. And that's when everything changes. You don't owe your emotions to everyone who asks, "Are you okay?" Sometimes people ask not because they care, but because they're curious. They want access, not understanding. They want the story, not the truth. That's why hiding your emotional depth isn't about being cold or distant. It's about protecting what's sacred, because your emotions are the most expensive currency you have. Once you spend them in the wrong place, you realize how quickly they lose their value. As women, especially as we get older, society has trained us to be open books, to share, to be vulnerable, to tell our stories for the sake of connection. But not every connection is worth making, and not every listener is worthy of your truth. When you've lived enough life, you start to see the difference between someone who wants to know you and someone who just wants to use what they know about you. That's where wisdom steps in. It teaches you that your emotions are not a public event. They're a private dialogue between you and your peace. People mistake kindness for access. They assume that if you smile, if you listen, if you comfort them, then they have the right to your own heart in return. But emotional maturity means understanding that empathy is a gift, not an invitation. You can care deeply and still have boundaries. You can love people fully and still not let them see everything that lives inside you. Because when you show the wrong people the depth of your emotions, they don't swim, they drown, and they'll pull you under with them. Every time you explain your pain to someone who isn't capable of handling it, you end up feeling emptier. They can't meet you where you are because they're not equipped for that level of depth. Some people live on the surface, and that's okay. Let them. But don't drag your ocean into their puddle. They'll never understand its weight, and they'll always leave you feeling misunderstood. Protect your emotional world from those who only see it as entertainment or leverage. You see, hiding your emotional depth isn't dishonesty, it's discernment. You can be honest without being exposed. You can be genuine without being transparent. People often glorify vulnerability like it's the ultimate strength. But strength doesn't mean showing every scar. Sometimes strength means choosing silence when you could explain, calm when you could cry, grace when you could rage. It's knowing that your emotions are powerful enough to move mountains, but wise enough not to move for everyone. Older women, especially, understand the cost of emotional openness. You've given your energy to people who didn't appreciate it. You've cried in front of people who offered sympathy, but no understanding. You've shared your fears only to have them used against you later. And that's the hard truth. Not everyone who listens deserves your truth. Some people are just gathering information, waiting for the day they can twist your words or measure your worth against their own insecurities. So you start to learn. You start to guard your peace like it's gold. Because it is. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop trying to prove your emotions are valid. You stop giving access to those who haven't earned it. And something amazing happens. You start feeling lighter. The noise quiets down. The world becomes less heavy because you're not constantly giving away your energy to those who drain it. There's power in mystery, power in restraint. When people can't read you easily, they respect you differently. They know they can't play games with someone who doesn't put all her cards on the table. That's not manipulation. It's maturity. It's knowing that peace is built in private, not performed in public. When you protect your emotional depth, you protect your power. Because once people see how deeply you feel, they learn how to pull those strings. And some will. They'll test you, guilt you, provoke you, just to watch you react. But when you've mastered the art of emotional privacy, you don't react anymore. You respond, if at all, from a place of control. Think about how often you've been told, you're too emotional, or you take things too seriously. Those phrases aren't reflections of you. They're reflections of people who can't handle the weight of someone who feels deeply. The world rewards surface level emotions, smiles, small talk, quick forgiveness. But deep emotions make people uncomfortable because they reveal depth in a shallow world. Don't let that pressure you into hiding your depth entirely. Just learn where to place it. Share it where it's valued, not where it's drained. Imagine your emotions like a garden. You've spent years tending it, planting patience, watering kindness, pruning pain. You don't let just anyone walk through that garden. Some people will trample your flowers and call it honesty. Others will take what they want and leave. But a few, the right few, will enter quietly. They'll notice the beauty. They'll understand the effort. Those are the people you show your depth to. The rest, they can admire from a distance. It's not selfish to be selective. It's self-respect. Because every time you open your emotional world to someone unqualified to handle it, you hand them a weapon. And when they use it, you blame yourself for being too trusting. But that's how lessons are learned. Over time, you stop feeling guilty for being private. You stop apologizing for protecting your energy. You realize that your calm is not coldness. It's clarity. You're not detached, you're deliberate. And the beauty of emotional privacy is that it gives you freedom. Freedom from the need for validation. Freedom from explaining your worth. Freedom from the emotional chaos of people who thrive on drama. When you keep your depth hidden from those who can't swim in it, you stop drowning in their shallow expectations. You start thriving quietly. You start glowing differently. You start living from the inside out, not the outside in. People may call you mysterious, guarded, or hard to read. Let them. They don't understand that silence is not emptiness, it's strength. That the calmness they see is built on storms they'll never know about. That your peace wasn't gifted, it was earned through every heartbreak, every disappointment, every lesson that taught you to choose yourself first. So hide your emotional depth not because you're afraid to feel, but because you've learned the power of who gets to feel it with you. The world doesn't need to know everything that moves inside you. Not everyone deserves front row seats to your emotions. Keep the best parts of yourself for those who've proven they can handle them. Because your emotions are not for consumption. They're for connection. And connection, real connection, only happens when two people can meet each other's depth with equal respect and understanding. Hide your personal struggles while you're still healing from them. Because the world doesn't pause for your pain. It watches it. Some people will pity you, others will judge you, and a few will secretly feel relieved that you're struggling while they're not. That's the hard truth most people never say out loud. When you're in the middle of healing, your heart is fragile, your perspective is raw, and your emotions are louder than your logic. That's not the time to expose your wounds. That's the time to protect them. Because when your pain is fresh, you don't need validation. You need silence, space, and time to process. Healing is sacred. It's messy. It's unpredictable. And the mistake so many people make is turning that process into a performance. They post their pain online. They talk about it to anyone who will listen. They search for comfort in people who aren't capable of giving it. But here's the thing. When you let too many people into your healing, you give them power over your recovery. You let their opinions, judgments, And expectations shape how you feel about your own pain. And before you know it, you're not healing, you're managing perceptions. Older women, especially, know this lesson the hard way. You've been there. You've gone through heartbreak, loss, betrayal, maybe even failure, and people said, "You're strong, you'll get through it." But strength isn't the absence of pain, it's the ability to protect yourself while you're in it. You don't owe anyone your breakdown just because they ask how you're doing. You don't have to share your lowest moments to prove you're authentic. You don't have to tell the story before you've written the ending. People often misunderstand transparency as bravery. They say, "You should open up. It helps others." And sometimes it does, but not when you're still bleeding. Because when you share your struggles too soon, you give the world access to a version of you that hasn't stabilized yet. That's when people's opinions can sink deep into your self-esteem. One wrong word, one careless comment, one comparison, and suddenly your healing becomes harder. You start questioning yourself. You start wondering if you're doing it wrong. You start shaping your recovery around how others see it instead of what you actually need. Healing is not meant to be public. It's meant to be quiet, unseen, deeply personal. It's the process of sitting with your pain long enough to understand what it's teaching you. It's crying at midnight and showing up the next morning anyway. It's forgiving people who'll never apologize, letting go of what you can't fix, and learning to live again one small, shaky step at a time. You don't need applause for that. You don't need witnesses. You just need to protect that space until you can stand without holding on to anyone else's opinion. The world is full of people who say, "I understand," but they don't. They sympathize for a moment, then move on. They tell you how they handled things, what they would do, what they think you should feel. And that noise can make you lose touch with your own truth. Sometimes the best way to heal is to go quiet, to step back from conversations that drain you, to not explain what you're going through to those who wouldn't get it anyway. You don't owe updates on your pain. You don't owe explanations for your boundaries. Healing doesn't need witnesses. It needs privacy. Think of it like tending to a wound. You don't heal an open cut by exposing it to the world. You cover it. You keep it clean. You protect it until it starts closing. The same goes for emotional wounds. They need protection, not exposure. Because every time you share your pain before you've processed it, you risk reopening what was starting to close. And that's not strength. That's self-sabotage disguised as openness. Some people won't understand why you've become more private. They'll say you've changed, that you're distant, that you're not the same. And they're right. You've learned that peace is built in silence. You've learned that the world doesn't need to see every storm to believe you've survived one. You've learned that strength isn't about showing how broken you were. It's about showing up whole when no one expected you to. Healing in private also protects you from manipulation. There are people who will use your vulnerabilities against you, not always maliciously, sometimes just carelessly. They'll bring up your pain in arguments. They'll make you feel guilty for still feeling it. They'll say things like, "I thought you were over that by now." And that's exactly why not everyone deserves access to your struggles. The fewer people who know what you're working through, the less control they have over how you move forward. You don't have to justify your silence. You don't have to announce your healing journey. You can disappear for a while, work on yourself, and come back stronger without explaining where you went or what you were fighting. The world will notice the transformation. It always does. They'll see the peace, the confidence, the calm energy, and they'll wonder what changed. But you'll know it wasn't one big revelation. It was 1,000 small decisions to protect your energy, to walk away from what hurt, and to stop giving broken people front row seats to your recovery. There's a unique beauty in private healing. It teaches you patience. It teaches you trust in yourself, not in others. It teaches you to stop outsourcing your comfort. You stop looking for closure in conversations that will never happen. You stop expecting people to understand emotions they've never felt. You start learning that peace isn't something people give you. It's something you build by not giving your pain away too early. So hide your struggles until you've healed enough to talk about them without breaking down. Until you can share the story from a place of strength, not survival. Until your voice doesn't shake when you speak about it, because that's when your pain turns into power. That's when your story starts serving you instead of draining you. That's when your silence transforms into wisdom. Healing doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. It means knowing that privacy isn't isolation, it's protection. Because when you hide your struggles while you're still healing, you're not running away from your pain. You're giving it space to become your strength. Hide your plans and goals until they've turned into results. Because nothing kills a dream faster than premature exposure. The moment you start talking about what you're going to do, the world starts talking back. They question you, they doubt you, they project their own fears onto your vision. And suddenly, what started as excitement turns into pressure. What was once your personal fire becomes a public performance. You stop creating for yourself and start proving yourself to others. That's how dreams die. Not because they weren't possible, but because they were shared too soon. There's a power in silence that most people underestimate. When no one knows your next move, they can't interfere with it. They can't discourage you, distract you, or dilute your focus with their opinions. And older women especially understand this truth, because by this point in life, you've seen how quickly enthusiasm can turn into resistance once people get involved. You've shared ideas that others called unrealistic. You've had people nod politely while secretly hoping you'd fail. And you've learned that it's not always jealousy. Sometimes it's projection. People can only see the world through the limits of their own belief. So when you share your plans with small thinkers, they try to shrink your vision to fit their comfort. The problem is that every time you speak about your goals, your brain releases a small hit of dopamine, the same satisfaction you'd feel after actually accomplishing something. That's why talking too much about what you'll do can trick you into feeling like you've already done it. You lose that hunger, that quiet determination that drives action. But when you keep your goals private, you stay focused. You stay hungry. You stop performing progress and start building it. There's also strategy and mystery. Think about it. When people don't know what you're planning, they can't prepare against it. They can't sabotage, they can't compete, and they can't copy what they can't see. Silence keeps your power intact. It creates curiosity, and curiosity creates respect. Because in a world where everyone overshares, restraint looks like strength. People start to realize you're not driven by attention. You're driven by intention. Keeping your plans private isn't about being secretive. It's about being strategic. Every goal has a fragile phase, a stage where it's too new, too vulnerable to survive other people's energy. That's the stage you protect the most. It's like planting a seed. You don't dig it up every few days to show people how it's growing. You cover it, water it, and let time do its work. Because growth happens underground where no one's watching. And the same goes for your success. The real work is done in silence, not in conversation. When you tell everyone your plans, you invite noise. Some will encourage you, but others will plant doubt. Are you sure that's a good idea? Isn't it too late for that? What if it doesn't work? Those words start echoing in your mind until you begin second-guessing yourself. Doubt spreads fast when you give it an audience. But when you work quietly, you give your vision time to grow roots before the storm comes. You stay connected to your why, not distracted by what they think. It's not that people are always against you. Sometimes they just don't understand you. They can't see what you see. They don't have your fire, your experiences, your intuition. So they try to guide you based on their own fears. That's why you must protect your plans from unnecessary input, because advice from the wrong people can derail the right path. Not all opinions are valuable. Not all feedback is wise. And not every friend is a confidant. Older women know that silence speaks louder than promises. You've reached a point where you don't need to announce, you demonstrate. You don't talk about goals. You show results. There's confidence in that. Quiet confidence that doesn't need validation, applause, or proof. When you stop explaining what you're doing and start doing it, the results become your statement. The people who doubted you will see it. The ones who dismissed you will hear about it. And you won't have to say a word. There's also peace and privacy. When your plans are yours alone, there's no pressure to rush. No need to meet deadlines you didn't agree to. No fear of failing in front of others. You can take your time. You can experiment. You can fail privately, learn quietly, and come back stronger without anyone knowing you ever stumbled. That's the kind of freedom public plans can never give you. Because once people know, they expect, they watch, they wait. And the moment you slow down, they call it failure. But if they don't know what you're building, they can't measure your progress. You'll notice that the most powerful people don't talk about everything they're doing. They move in silence. They understand that attention is a distraction. Every word you speak about your plans gives away a little bit of energy that could have gone into action. So they stay quiet until it's done. Then they let their results speak louder than any speech ever could. That's the kind of discipline that separates dreamers from doers. There's a difference between secrecy and privacy. Secrecy is hiding because you're afraid. Privacy is protecting because you're wise. You're not keeping things from others out of mistrust. You're keeping them for yourself out of respect. You've worked too hard, dreamed too deeply, and come too far to let careless words or skeptical minds interfere with what's meant for you. Silence is your shield. It keeps your energy pure and your focus sharp. When you look back on your life, you'll realize that the biggest shifts happened quietly. You made decisions in solitude. You changed direction in silence. You rebuilt yourself without broadcasting it. And when the time came, you showed up different, stronger, calmer, wiser. People were surprised, but you weren't. Because you knew what you were building all along. You just didn't need to tell anyone, so keep your goals close. Keep your vision sacred. Let people see the results, not the process. You don't need to prove your ambition through words. Let your actions do that. Because talking shows confidence, but silence shows control. And in a world that never stops talking, control is the rarest power of all. You said 4. ChatGPT said, hide your self-worth from people who try to measure it. Because the moment you let others define your value, you start shrinking to fit their understanding. You start doubting your brilliance just because someone else couldn't recognize it. But your worth was never meant to be seen by everyone. It was meant to be known by you. Older women especially understand this truth because after years of giving, pleasing, and proving, you realize that some people will never see your value no matter how loudly you show it. Not because it's invisible, but because it intimidates them. There's a quiet power that comes with knowing who you are without needing anyone to confirm it. When you've lived enough life, been misunderstood enough times, and rebuilt yourself after being overlooked, you stop seeking validation from small minds. You stop explaining your choices, your past, your dreams. You stop auditioning for acceptance in rooms that were never designed to hold your kind of strength. Because once you know your worth, you stop discounting yourself for the sake of belonging. The truth is, people will always try to measure you with their own ruler. They'll define your value by what you can give them, how you make them feel, or how you fit into their story. And when you no longer serve that purpose, they'll act like your worth has changed. But it hasn't. Their perspective did. And that's exactly why you don't put your self-worth on display. Because when people can see how much you value yourself, the wrong ones will either challenge it, test it, or try to bargain with it. Hiding your self-worth doesn't mean doubting it. It means protecting it from cheap eyes and careless hands. It means knowing that not everyone deserves to know how deeply you respect yourself. Because some people take that as a challenge. They'll try to bring you down just to see if you'll stay grounded. They'll mock your confidence, question your boundaries, label your standards as arrogance. And if you're not careful, you'll start believing them. You'll start lowering yourself just to make others comfortable. That's how powerful other people's opinions can be when you give them access to your value. But when you keep your self-worth private, you become untouchable. People can sense your confidence, but they can't manipulate it. They can feel your strength, but they can't measure it. Because what they can't define, they can't control. That's why the most graceful people often seem mysterious. They don't announce their value. They embody it. They walk with quiet assurance that doesn't need to shout. That's what intimidates others, and that's what protects them. Older women learn that confidence built on external approval is fragile. It breaks the moment someone withdraws their praise. But confidence built in solitude, through trials, through growth, through silence, is unshakable. You start realizing that you are not defined by your relationships, your looks, your mistakes, or your achievements. You are defined by how you rise every time life knocks you down. You are defined by how you carry yourself when no one's clapping. You are defined by the respect you give yourself, even when no one else gives it to you. There's a freedom that comes with hiding your worth. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop defending your standards. You stop justifying why you expect more, because you finally understand that people who respect themselves don't negotiate their value. They don't beg to be seen. They don't chase understanding. They simply are. That's the kind of quiet dignity that comes with age and experience. You don't need the world to validate what you already know to be true. People will try to measure you through comparison. They'll look at your life, your choices, your pace, and think they can calculate your value from the outside. But comparison is the thief of peace and the enemy of authenticity. No one else has lived your story, survived your battles, or carried your pain with the same grace. So no one else gets to decide what you're worth. And the moment you realize that, you stop competing, you stop explaining. You just exist in your truth. Hiding your worth also protects your peace. Because when people can't access your self-esteem, they can't manipulate it. You stop reacting to every opinion, every judgment, every criticism. You stop explaining why you're doing what you're doing. You let people misunderstand you, and you stay calm about it. Because you've reached a place where being misunderstood feels lighter than over-explaining yourself to people determined not to understand. That's the kind of calm only self-worth can bring. Sometimes the most empowering thing you can do is smile quietly when someone underestimates you. Because you know something they don't. You know that your value doesn't decrease when they fail to see it. Their blindness doesn't dim your light. It only reveals how limited their vision is. You don't need to correct them. You don't need to convince them. Let them think what they want while you continue to rise above their measurements. Because growth doesn't ask for permission, and worth doesn't require recognition. There's strength in subtlety. When you hide your self-worth from those who try to measure it, you move differently. You stop chasing people and start attracting peace. You stop seeking validation and start living in alignment. You don't need to prove your importance. You radiate it. Every boundary, every calm, no. Every moment you choose silence over reaction becomes a quiet declaration of value. You're not cold, you're clear. You're not distant, you're selective. You're not arrogant, you're aware. The truth is, some people will never be capable of seeing your worth because they haven't discovered their own. They can only value you at the level they value themselves. And that's why you don't waste time convincing anyone. You let people meet you where they're able to, and you no longer lower your energy to be understood. That's not pride, that's peace. When you hide your self-worth from those who try to measure it, you reclaim your narrative. You stop being defined by others' opinions, expectations, or insecurities. You start living by your own standards. And that's when your presence changes. You walk into rooms differently. You speak differently. You carry yourself with the calm certainty of someone who doesn't need to be seen to know they shine. Because your worth was never in the eyes watching you. It was in the soul carrying you.